Thank you. Hello, everybody. How are you feeling today? Super psyched in the back. So, a very warm welcome to our panel on future-proofing the electricity grid. So, I'm Linda Maria Wadman, and I must say I've always been super fascinated by our electricity infrastructure. And it served us so well during more than 100 years. But now, with climate change, it appears we also have to change how we live our lives, our everyday. And this will cause massive stress on our electricity grids. So, to achieve net zero, electricity consumption will probably more than double. So electricity grids are more and more becoming really the backbone of our electricity energy transition. And, but they were designed 100 years ago, and by then, back then we didn't have weather-dependent renewable energy, we didn't have rooftop solar or electric cars or anything. So in order to reach net zero, our entire electricity infrastructure also has to change. So what if the grid can't cope with the speed of these changes and become a bottleneck? And if so, what are we actually already doing to make sure that that doesn't happen? Because that would, I don't even want to know the result of that one. So there is a lot at stake here, and I'm super happy to have this competent panel with me today to help answer some of these questions and discuss the topic. Mm-hmm. So I think it's fair to start from the top, maybe from the grid perspective. Mm-hmm. So, Javier, you are a grid operator in Enel. So, what's your view on the whole challenge and making the grid fit for the energy transition? And where do we need, you think, innovation to solve a potentially urgent situation?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Linda. From our point of view of the network, I would say that we are facing two major challenges that you somehow mentioned. On the one hand, we have an increasing rate of renewable sources for electricity generation, and in the other side, we have a growing in the demand electrification. In the middle, we have the distribution network. The distribution network needs to act as a facilitator, as an activator of that transition. And that means that the grid needs to host all that increasing number of distributed generators and that increasing power flows to supply that demand, which is increasing, with reliability, with resiliency, and with sustainability. Having that in mind, we cannot forget that the grid itself has an impact. It has emissions related. And also to overcome these two challenges, we are working in three lines. On the one hand, firstly, we're working on more sustainable technologies, like, for example, free SF6 devices, just to cause the lower direct emissions. In the second point, we're working towards the reduction of technical losses that represent a 46% of the emission impact in our business. And finally, we are searching for innovative, sustainable material and components, which represent a 50% of the impact, and where we are working on circularity, the use of recycled input, and the full life cycle of the components that we have in our grid. That's how we are doing.
So those are two very key areas to help us reach this goal. And let's introduce another topic, which is flexibility. Which is sort of a subtopic of what you're doing. So flexibility is a big buzzword used in this segment right now. And all the way from EU Green Deal and Electricity Markets Directive, there's regulation saying that individual, you and me, we should have the ability to participate in markets and sell our demand flexibility. That's by EU law. So this is really opening up for a whole new set of actors and also new business models in the energy ecosystem. And I think, Jesper, you and Flower, you are such a good example of this new actor in the market. So could you just tell us a little bit about what is it you actually do, and what value does it provide to the grid?
Of course. So Flower is a company, it stands for Flexible Power. That is a technology and software provider that develops and operates a flexibility platform. You can also call it a virtual power plant, where we have the role as an aggregator. But what we really do and what our core is to really unlock the flexibility, both on the consumption side and the production side that we have in the new power system that we are developing today. So on the consumption side, we work with the EV chargers, heat pumps. We can also work with small-scale batteries, where we aggregate these, connect them to our platform, and then we sell the capability to actually control these assets. In Sweden, we sell them mainly to the Swedish TSO, that is in charge of keeping balance in the national grid at all times between consumption and production. So we sell, for example, with the EV chargers, we sell the capability to reduce consumption at any given time. And for that, we get paid by the TSO. And our business model is based on a profit split. So we take a share, and then we share it to the end consumer. And we also work on the production side with the new types of asset that also needs to have a regulating power, which means for solar and wind, for example, we sell the capability to actually curtail the power if there is a disturbance in the grid. And for that, we create a new type of revenue stream for the power plant owners, where now their main revenue is for maximizing energy production. But now we're also opening up the revenue stream of actually selling the capability to support the grid by reducing production. It's not intuitive, but it actually ends up providing a better balance sheet at the end.
So you say it's not intuitive, and I know this is a bit complex, and it's adding tons of complexity, I think, to an already advanced machine, which is the energy ecosystem. So I'm thinking, from ZIV, Borja, I mean, you have tons of experience in delivering products that actually, I would say, act as the foundation to make the grid, to enable smart functionality in the grid, to make it smarter and more modern. So, but what do we actually mean when we talk about a digital grid? And how does digitalization add value in this case?
Okay, Linda Maria, thank you. Well, I think for a long time now, we've seen digitalization in the high voltage part of the grid. But what's really going to be the new revolution, what's coming absolutely like a big wave, is adding digitalization to the low voltage side of the network. Why? Because we have many new players that are coming into the grid, like the distributed renewable energy producers, like the EV chargers, like heat pumps and others. So we have a much higher degree of complexity that we used to have, and it's going to be bidirectional. So in essence, we need to add electronics and communication technology, not only to monitor the network on the low voltage, but also to be able to act on it. One example of this are the smart meters. Well, we have already close to 200 million meters in Europe, and those are digital devices that can measure real-time the energy and send it to a central system of the DSO, allowing the utility not only to bill or invoice the customer, but also to read and receive alarms or events and be able to act on those alarms of events. For example, if the meter sends an alarm saying that it's being tampered, the utility can interrupt the supply. And this is, of course, a great benefit. Another example, which is somehow linked, would be the supervision and monitoring of the low voltage in the secondary substation. By adding digital technology, we can compare the energy that goes out of that low voltage line, compare it with the addition of all the smart meters that line is serving, And if there's a difference, of course, we can know there's a leak, or there is a fraud, or there is something in that way. In consequence, that allows the utility to reduce the OPEX, and some utilities have talked about the savings of more than 30%, and also it has a big impact on the CapEx.
So technology is an enabler, absolutely, and there's a lot we can do, but I'm thinking that in this change, there's so many other things. It's the competence, it's processes, it's laws and regulation. And if we look again back to your case at Flour, you've started up your business quite successfully in Sweden. That's where you were founded. So what do you think are the key drivers that enable you to step in as this new player and enter that market?
I think, so we were started 2 years ago in Sweden, so we've come quite far, just in under 2 years. But I think one of the, I mean, it's a perfect storm. So in Sweden, there is really a big incentive to buy more flexibility, and the TSO has 8 different markets, and a pretty big budget to actually spend money on buying and procuring flexibility. But we have a fully built-out hydropower system, which can only provide so much. So the TSO in Sweden needs new types of asset to provide the flexibility. So they're really keen to try new types of assets like EV chargers, solar farms, batteries, both small scale and large scale. So they really, like, they have the incentive, we have the incentive to really exist and to work with our partners to actually sell the flexibility, and there's a clear buyer of flexibility. I think that's what we see in Europe. I mean, UK has come quite far, but I know here in Spain and in a lot of different countries in Europe, there's not a clear incentive and a clear market for these types of services. I mean, we have the incentive from the Green Deal, and like we all know, we all understand within the energy industry that we need flexibility. There's still not a clear market for who's paying for it and how like actors like us can actually exist and create value and actually have a sustainable business model.
So business, money talks, right? I think
Yes.
if there's a market, there is money, there is a need, then things will change. And that's important to keep in mind, and I'm happy to see that there is actually those. I mean, the commercial drivers are starting to get there. We have fuel prices as well going through the roof, and that's also continue helping our cause. So that's a clear enabler. But if we think about also technology as an enabler, I think that, Borja, do you have any takeaways or wake-up calls that you would like to push for to make sure that we avoid a situation where the technology becomes the bottleneck?
Okay, you know, of course, like an industry, you have many challenges, but some of the biggest, first, and it almost looks shocking, but today the material shortage in the semiconductor industry is a hurdle for the deployment of smart grids. There is huge demand compared to the industrial capacity, and we, the industry, basically can't get all the components we would like, and this is creating an issue, and it's gonna slow down, or could slow down, the deployment of all the technological solutions that the DSOs need. And I think that's something that is not going to be fixed right away. Next water is gonna go on for a while. So to me, that's one big one. One second one is regulation. So in most countries, the distribution activity is regulated, and the rules of the game are set for a business that existed 40, 50 years ago, totally different than the one we need, and which basically pays a return on CapEx. While now, we have to deploy and supply technological solutions that need a certain maintenance on cybersecurity, on new functionalities that require a maintenance and OPEX that in some countries the DSOs cannot pay because they are not paid to do so. So regulators need to adapt the rules of game to the new picture. I would say that's number two. And number three, I think that the third challenge I would think of is that different countries, or even within the same country, different customers have or want different communication protocols, or have different requirements on cybersecurity that in some cases are even contradictory. So that, of course, has a risk of slowing down the development of technological solutions, and has the risk of increasing the price. There could be many others, but I think those are the main three I would pick.
Okay. And you mentioned that there's different challenges in different countries. There are different challenges in different markets. All come from what I usually say is that we all converge to sort of the same situation with the energy transition, but we all have different starting points, which we must take into consideration. And going back to you, Javier, and Enel, I mean, you are one of the world's largest grid operators. You have business in multiple countries, so you must encounter many different challenges in these different markets. And you're also sort of a first mover and innovator. So what is what do you think are keys to really increasing the speed of transformation and make sure we get to that sustainable energy system?
We act with that global vision, but also at the same time with a local approach. The way we try to innovate to be more sustainable is like, first of all, by identifying the needs, the challenges that we have in any country that is part of Enel distribution activities, and any business unit, any function, any team. Having that in mind, we listen to startups, to industry, to academia, to search for solutions. And when we have a match between the challenge and the solution, we develop a proof of concept for a practical validation in real operation conditions. No matter if the necessity is in Colombia or in Spain, if the startup comes from Sweden or from Italy, it doesn't matter. And our focus is put on the scalability, the replicability, not only at country level, but also in a cross-country scale. And to do so, we need to, at the end, to leverage on the most disruptive solutions, perhaps unknown solutions so far. It doesn't matter if a solution comes from a crop, sustainable crop, to give us wood, to make a pole for our overhead line, with a sustainable plastic that comes from our output process. So it's a circular design for all the process that we have. With that cross-country approach, that sharing best practices and being a world player that is able to move first for certain actions. No? So
how do you, and this is a bonus question to Javier, so he doesn't know about it, but how do you see that interaction between Enel having a lot of your own power and muscles to innovate yourself? You have grid expertise, so you are developing a lot of tools, and then you also have the need to work with other parties like startups. So how do you see that coming together and collaboration?
Yeah, I think that open model is a success, because at the end we have our capabilities to develop our own solutions, to produce it, but also sometimes that knowledge, that value can be outside. And academia, startups, they can be even faster movers in this world. So we launch challenges in an open style, sometimes via our scouting networks, sometimes in a completely open format, open to the public. And how we gather that potential solutions, having a clear list of needs and challenges that we have already previously identified. That is why we can make that match and to execute in a practical proof of concept. And also, I would like to remark that we are including the sustainability factor in all this, because if we want to be net zero in 2040, we need to include the sustainability in every step of the innovation process.
So I don't know, Jesper or Borja, do you have what's your view on this? how could we collaborate? I mean, I think this is an excellent example of what I said, 3 layers in the ecosystem. We have the grid here, represented by Javier, and then we have sort of the service layer with Jesper, and then the enabler on the digitalization level with Borja. So we need to really work together between all these 3 partners. Do you have any views on how we could do that better or more, or is there anything stopping us from this?
Well, if I could choose something, even at the risk of shooting my foot, because I'm a manufacturer, I think one key area would be to push for open architectures and interoperable systems, so that it results easier and easier to scale on current developments. We've seen too much of proprietary or private protocols that have been deployed and developed, and of course that is a stopper for the development of digital solutions. So I think we see trends already doing that, and see many utilities working together in different task forces and groups, trying to think about how that can work. But I think it's a shift of mindset from a more closed world to more open environment, where we all will need to bring a different value than we used to.
Yeah, and I think I can add to that and just build on that, because that's what we really see. Like, like one of the key drivers for us is just partnerships, and it can be partnerships with grid operators or technology providers. But what we really see now with different types of manufacturers is like the proprietary systems and the lack of an open architecture for us as an innovation company to really build on and to actually think in a new way in a new power system. I mean, I think that's also why we've come quite far, is because a lot of us are engineers and economists, but none of us has really been in the energy industry before, so we really have a clean perspective, or like really fresh perspective of how to do things. And like, is scheduling every asset, is that the perfect way to do it? Maybe not. Maybe we should work dynamically, real time. But in order to do that, we need to be able to find these partnerships that are extremely valuable, and also work with open architecture.
So I'm curious, Jesper, when will you conquer the rest of the world? I mean, you started in Sweden, and I think in Sweden we have a challenge related a lot to capacity in the grid. And I know in Spain there is also a sort of other challenge related to a lot of solar in-feed, increasing number of rooftop solar. So again, the different starting points, different problems converging into the same solutions. So how do you see, expanding into other markets outside of Sweden? Is that in your plan, or how you?
Yeah, that's definitely our plan.
Come to Spain?
Yeah, hopefully we'll come to Spain soon. We're actually looking to hire our first person here, but we'll see. So we've just entered into Denmark, and now we have 5 summer analysts working on analyzing where to expand next. And that really comes from where's the best market for us to enter, where we actually see where we create value for partners and end customers, but where we can also exist. Here in Spain now, there's only closed markets for ancillary services. So like, if we were to enter here today, there's really no one to pay us for the value that we provide, and then we could not either pay the end customer and really unlock the flexibility that the grid in Spain, for example, has.
Yeah, you need that. So I want to give the audience maybe one more takeaway before we end. So to each of you, if you could just select one thing that you think is the most important action, or what do we have to do now to make sure our grids are fit for the future? Starting with you, Javier, what would that be?
Yeah, I would say the challenge is common. So all the community needs to work together, all the stakeholders, not only the grid operators, but also all the startups, the service providers, the technology providers, and even the raw material providers, to reach that common goal. If we don't go together, it will be hard to be on time to get it.
Thank you.
I can only agree. I'd say, speed is key here, and to be able to act fast, we really need, like, the stakeholders need to work together here. forgot what I was, my next point. Maybe I can add to it later.
Yeah.
Okay, so of course, working together is key, and I would build on another topic that has come. If I had to, assuming we are working together, now I can have one more, would be a quick change of regulation in the major markets that is very much needed to allow the DSOs to do what they need to do fast and quick.
Yeah. So technology is there, you mean we just, please regulators, just give us the chance to move faster. Yeah.
Yes, and I can add to that because that is really what we need to see. The regulators and governments, we need to have an open, almost a big sandbox project for the complete energy system, and I think we can do that. Even though I think the energy system, I mean, reliability, stability, and security is top of mind for everyone. And as long as we prioritize that, we can still work with a lot of innovation and new things. And for that, we need a more open legislative and new regulations to really facilitate that.
So I think I started by saying that the energy ecosystem is fascinating because of the complexity, and I don't think that from this discussion we've definitely seen that there is more and more complexity coming, and there's also more and more innovation needed and already underway. So that's very exciting to hear about these your insights, and thanks a lot for that. And very good to hear that you are all working in these different layers towards reaching the same goal to make sure our grids are actually future-proof. So thanks again, and thank you also to the audience for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this and that you have a great rest of the day.